Colonization, slavery, and apartheid were not just systems of injustice and exploitation. They fractured societies, displaced communities, and stripped entire populations of their dignity and agency, leaving deep, lasting wounds that continue to shape the lives of millions in the global South and South Africa today. Entrenched inequality, cycles of poverty, and social division with lasting ripples and systemic barriers to education, limited economic opportunities, and unequal access to justice and dignity are all consequences of unhealed generational trauma. With the wounds of our recent past still so raw, economic development and true transformation seems unattainable. But imagine a South Africa where we find language to articulate and address these wounds so we can heal, and where a diverse group of people and communities come together to learn from each other, collaborate, and build trust to realize an alternate future where access to dignity translates into equity and justice. Not as an ideal, but a lived reality for all. For decades, we have witnessed the devastation of our planet, not only through historic injustices and compromise of our social fabric, but in the concurrent destruction of our natural ecosystems too. As a species, our relentless exploitation of resources has come at a staggering cost, with climate change and extreme weather events affecting every corner of the globe. But it's the global South that bears the economic brunt. With fewer resources, these disasters hit the poorest communities hardest, which is why a transition to renewable energy is crucial, not only to save our planet, but critically to enable these communities to survive and thrive. The just energy transition is not just about shifting from fossil fuels to renewable energy. It's about doing so in a way that is fair, inclusive, and beneficial to all. As the largest carbon emitter in Africa, South Africa's response to the global pursuit of justice within the energy transition is REIPP, the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program. Launched in 2011 to aid our energy crisis, REIPP is visionary by design because of its economic development framework and therefore potential to truly empower and sustain communities across our country, not just as passive recipients of benefit, but as legitimate architects of their own futures. Valuable work is being done to prioritize energy security and economic development with community ownership at heart. But greater collaboration is key to achieving the full potential of renewable energy in South Africa and beyond.
From an economic development perspective, what we've focused on as the REIPPPP office is impact and sustainability. We've seen what's happened in the mining space where mines left ghost towns. That's one thing that does not happen in this transition.
The Economic Development Scorecard is comprised of 7 elements. It doesn't just get private sector to contribute to economic development through one specific avenue, but actually it provides a smorgasbord of opportunities for how the private sector can conceptualize and make contributions.
These contributions are not only to meet the requirements of the implementation agreements that IPPs have with the REIPPPP office. They are in place to ensure that communities around these power plants can thrive.
And so the opportunity with REIPP is to go beyond compliance and to be intentionally transformative.
The construction phase of an IPP project within REIPP stimulates local economies through its demand for various types of goods and services, work and skills. This phase results in substantial temporary job creation and opportunities for regional businesses. When the plant plugs into Eskom and moves into the operations phase, it generates revenue in return for the power produced. A percentage of this income is allocated to socio-economic and enterprise development, or SED and ED spend on community projects. When the plant starts turning an annual profit and when the project company declares and distributes dividends, the community trust also receives its share. From the share, the community trust needs to service the debt associated with its shareholder loan, the loan that facilitated its purchase of shareholding in the plant. The balance of these dividends can then be used to build local capacity, create opportunities, and invest in community development projects.
The operational financing of the projects, as well as the debt commitments or obligations, take sometimes 10, 12 to 15 years before you can actually realize the equity returns. And that's something that those communities and the community members don't really understand because the need exists now, but the resources aren't there from an equity perspective.
And so refinancing is one of the things that we've seen. And I think there's a huge opportunity to look into that, to unlock value much earlier on and strategically as well, so that projects and communities can feel I guess, a more tangible sense of ownership versus let me call a theoretical one, while they're waiting for dividends to flow.
Community ownership should mean community owning their future and communities owning those decisions.
How do we make sure that communities are no longer a stakeholder to be engaged, but a stakeholder that's intrinsically part of the decision making of how we design this organization, how it will function, what value it delivers, to who and how that happens.
Community equity is a difficult one because the community is not a monolith and there's different interests within the community about who wants what. You have different stakeholders with different priorities, different developmental goals, and sometimes competing priorities.
While community trusts often struggle to agree on how to manage their funding, which programs to implement, how to ensure governance and build trustee capacity in meaningful ways, IPPs also often struggle to channel their SED and ED funds appropriately to ensure tangible benefit to their communities.
When you impose projects within communities that don't address community needs, you sort of miss the mandate of what the trust is supposed to be doing.
It's best to consult, because when you do that, the resource that you bring to the community, we make sure, and the community makes sure that it keeps it safe, it uses the resource, and the resource is not being vandalized, because it's something that they needed. It's something that they asked for during the public participation meetings, during the consultation.
I think a lot of us as practitioners find ourselves in institutions and organizations and in spaces where we are figuring it out as we go. And there isn't a space where we can learn and know how to do it. There isn't like a proven model where somebody can just give you the template on how to do this in your community, and plus the complexity of the fact that all communities are quite different.
If those IPPs could be more coordinated and could actually be working together more effectively to be able to address the root of the problems with more substantial programs, we'd see much more impactful results.
As the wounds of our shared and divided past play out in complex ways, with noticeable gaps in skills, in impact, in acceptance, in coordination, and in trust, there's a sense of just how much more work needs to be done in this transition.
When you're building something new, you always need scaffolding. So the IPP in its origin started out as a scaffolding to help build the principles of a shift, start building the basis for an industry, start building the basis also for community involvement, and ensuring that it's not a polarized investment. All South Africans are sharing in it. And it's gotten to a point where it's contributed as best it can in the way that it was structured. But as with every program, it has to mature and evolve.
If you manage expectations from all sides, from government, from the community, from the IPPs, and they all know exactly what they need to do and what they're going to get out of, that's going to increase the likability of success.
They need the support. They need an organization that holds them, that holds the collaboration and brings them together.
Inspire, the Initiative for Social Performance in Renewable Energy, is an NGO founded on over a decade of work in the ecosystem that has emerged around REIPP. Made up of industry practitioners, academics, and government champions, Inspire's focus is to maximize the socio-economic impact that REIPP and the implementation of large-scale renewables can have as part of our energy transition.
Inspire has provided a very unique and critical platform to bridge gaps in community trust governance and capacity.
After a successful first learning event in 2020, Inspire's work towards improving collaboration and coordination in the sector has gained momentum, with several programs so far realized around building social performance capacity, convening strategic collaborations and partnerships, generating knowledge and research, and developing community-based models for positive impact with a focus on trauma-informed community leadership. Through funding from the IDC, Inspire's Trust Matters program creates a framework for thinking about how best to optimize the value that trust can bring to communities.
It's an opportunity that we can utilize to truly build communities in a way that empowers them to drive their own development.
We've tried to make sure that the voice of community trustees themselves have featured very strongly in how we design this program.
What are the experiences of community trusts to date? what is going really well, what might be missing to really ensure that community shareholding is meaningful.
What we see as the current lack of trust between communities and community trust, but also between community trusts and IPPs, but sometimes even the tension that may exist within the one community trust itself.
I think we really underestimate just how much woundedness, interpersonal conflict, difficult relationship slows down our capacity to deliver even our best intentions.
And what we've come up with is a trust maturity framework that addresses not only the regulations of trusts, but looks at governance, looks at capacity, looks at vision and strategy, and looks at impactful delivery. So it's actually a multifaceted approach that we need to take to be able to develop community trusts.
We journeyed outside of REIPP to Katu in the Northern Cape for insights from a successful mining trust.
The whole purpose of the trust and the mandate of the trust is to make sure that our communities are sustainable beyond the life of mines. So when the mines start closing, we need to make sure that families have alternative income streams. Understanding that community ownership means exactly that. They own the trust. And as for any owner, the owner decides what is done to its assets and to attend to its needs.
In the spirit of collaboration and partnership, Inspire's exchanging learnings and seeking ideas from communities and practitioners around the world. A process of building a shared global vision for community ownership and large-scale renewable energy.
We have come up with an idea called the Community Equity Opportunity Fund, and it is meant to support the community equity position across the life cycle of a project. So it's support the development stage, but then a bigger equity position during construction, and then an even bigger position when the project reaches commercial operation. This type of model actually shows how the positive social impacts of renewable energy can be achieved. We should stop thinking that communities don't have business projects or business ideas. They do. It's about coming to them and asking, what is it that they want to do in their lands?
Es un rol que la comunidad asumió y es el rol de ser socioaccionista implica que nosotros también estamos trabajando con otras lógicas, porque nosotros acá también somos parte tanto de las ganancias y de las pérdidas.
Community trusts were established as an act of parliament. We invested the money into a typical investment fund. So our fund is now worth $400 million. And over the 30 odd years that we've been going, we've given back $300 million back into our communities. The money that we have available, it really is a guardianship role that we play to ensure that our trust will continue on in perpetuity. The process of understanding community need, the understanding of the dreams and aspirations of community, and answering those dreams and aspirations, funding to that, and letting community get on and do the work that community is good at. Do not fund organisations to come in over the top and try and fix communities. Prior to colonisation, Māori were thriving. They were traders, they were market gardeners, they grew great crops, they fed countries, America, Australia, and Auckland as it was settled. And so there's a sense of what it was prior to white men coming, or white people coming into the country. We have to acknowledge that past, and that past is still hurting today. So if you could imagine if Māori never lost their land, what would they look like today? And when they lose land, they lose so much. Because you remember what was happening in New Zealand was not an isolated case, it was happening worldwide.
Though we cannot rewrite the historic injustices of humanity's past, the deep wounds borne by our ancestors and consequences that subsequent generations bear to this day, we do have an opportunity to play a part in writing a new story for generations to come. So today, let's imagine a South Africa where a strengthened and networked ecosystem in the renewable energy sector leads the charge and harnesses the energy of tomorrow to build a just, dignified, and equitable future for all.